The wind howled like a wild beast across the frozen valley. Snow fell in thick, heavy flakes, covering everything in white silence. In the middle of the storm, a thin alien woman stumbled forward, her arms wrapped tightly around a small bundle. The bundle was her child, barely breathing, weak, silent from hunger and cold. She pressed her forehead to the child's and whispered softly, "Just a little more, my love, just a little more." Her skin was pale and cracked, her clothes no better than rags. She had been walking for 2 days, chased out from the alien settlement by her own people. They said she was useless, a curse. A mother who couldn't feed her child had no place among them, so she walked into the snow, knowing death was near, but holding her child close. She would rather freeze in the wild than let them take her child away. The cold bit into her bones. Her legs heavy like stone, her feet bled beneath. Thin cloth, her hands numb and shaking. Every breath was a battle, every step a nightmare. But still, she moved forward even if she didn't know where she was going. The sky darkened quickly, the storm growing stronger. She fell to her knees, too weak to go on. The child in her arms didn't cry, didn't move, only made a small sound. Like a sigh. "No," she whispered, tears freezing on her cheeks. "Please, not now, not like this." She rocked back and forth, whispering songs she barely remembered, songs from a time when she still had hope, when her people still cared. And then, something changed. A light, soft and orange, appeared in the distance, moving slowly through the storm. At first, she thought it was a dream, a trick of the cold, but then she heard it, a low humming sound, like metal and machines. Her eyes widened, fear and hope mixing inside her like fire and ice. She tried to stand, but her body refused. So she stayed there, holding her child, waiting for whatever was coming. Maybe it was a hunter, maybe a slaver, maybe death itself. She was too tired to fight, too tired to care. As the light grew closer, she saw the shape of a tall figure, broad shoulders, dark clothing, something human. The figure stopped just a few steps away. Silent, staring at her, she stared back, eyes wide, lips trembling. "Please," she managed to whisper. "Don't take him. Take me if you must, but don't take my child." The human didn't move for a moment, then slowly took off his thick coat. Without a word, he wrapped it around her and the child, covering them in warmth. She gasped, feeling heat for the first time in days. He knelt down, reached into his bag, and pulled out a thermal blanket and something that smelled like food. He didn't ask questions, didn't speak cruel words. He only offered help, quiet, steady, and strong. She wanted to speak, to ask him why, but her throat burned. Instead, she just cried silently, tears falling on the child's face. The man gently picked both of them up and carried them toward his camp. She didn't fight him, didn't resist. For the first time in forever, she felt something soft inside her heart, something called safety. At the edge of a cliff, hidden by rocks, was a small camp of fire burning, a tent already warm. He placed them inside and wrapped them in layers of blankets. Then he handed her a cup of hot liquid. Wasn't like anything she had tasted before, but it warmed her body like sunlight. The child stirred in her arms, eyes blinking slowly. The human smiled at the child, then looked at her. "My name is Jace," he said quietly. "You don't have to speak now, just rest." She nodded slowly, lips trembling. She didn't know if this was a trick or real kindness, but she wanted to believe, even just once, that someone could help without wanting anything in return. Outside, the storm roared, cold and merciless, but inside the tent, the fire burned bright, and for the first time in a long time, she felt the cold might finally end. The fire crackled gently inside the small tent. Warmth spread through the air like a soft blanket. Pushing the cold outside where it belonged, Hope sat quietly, still holding her child in her arms, her body wrapped in thick blankets. She stared at the human across the fire, this man named Jace. He had given them food, warmth, and silence. But silence could be dangerous too. She had seen quiet men before, hunters who waited before striking, slavers who smiled before the pain began. Jace sat with his legs crossed, watching the flames, his weapon beside him. He didn't stare at her like others had. Not like she was broken or for sale, but that only made her more confused. Why had he helped her? What did he want? In return, her child, small and still weak, rested now under the warm covers. The little one's chest moved slowly, peacefully. She had not seen her baby sleep this calm in weeks, maybe months. That should have eased her heart, but it didn't. Instead, fear grew inside her. She had been hurt before, tricked by kind faces. She couldn't afford to be fooled again, not now. Not when her child's life was in someone else's hands. Jace stood up slowly and walked toward a metal container. He pulled out a bag and placed it beside her. "More food," he said, his voice low and steady. She looked at it, but didn't touch it. He noticed, but didn't press. "I'm not going to hurt you," he said gently. "Or your child." She looked away, biting her cracked lip. Kind words were easy to say. She had learned that the hard way, but trust was harder, nearly impossible. She remembered a traitor once who had given her food and then tried to take her child as payment. She had fought him with bare hands and teeth. Since then, she had trusted no one. Why? She finally whispered, her voice shaking. "Why did you help me?" Jace looked at her. Surprised, she had spoken. "Because you needed help," he replied, "and no one else was going to." That answer didn't make sense to her. People didn't help without a reason, not in her world. "You don't know me," she said, her voice harder now. "I could be lying. I could be a thief. Then you're the kindest thief I've ever met," he said with a slight smile, "protecting your child with nothing but your own body." She didn't respond, but her eyes stayed on him. He sat down again, not too close, not too far. His every move was slow, careful, like he didn't want to scare her. That made her even more nervous. Why go through all this? What was he hiding outside? The storm still raged, but it was softer now. The thick tent blocked the worst of it. Inside, time seemed frozen. Like the space between danger and safety, she kept watching him, trying to read him, but his face was calm, his eyes tired, not cruel, just lonely. Later, as the fire began to dim, he reached into his pack and pulled out something flat and black. He pressed a button, and a soft light appeared, a small screen. Showing a picture, it was a photo of another woman, human, smiling, holding a baby in her arms. "This was my wife," he said quietly, "and my daughter." Hope didn't speak, but her eyes stayed on the screen. "They're gone," he added. "Lost during the colony riots." His voice didn't shake, but his eyes told the story. Pain hidden under strength. She knew that feeling well. He put the photo away, leaned back against the wall, and closed his eyes. "I travel alone now," he said, "trying to help when I can." Silence filled the space again, but this time, it didn't feel dangerous. It felt sad, honest, like two broken souls sitting beside the same fire. Trying to find meaning, the child stirred in her arms, making a soft sound. Hope gently stroked the little one's head and whispered something in her own language. For a moment, she looked at Jace, not with fear, but with something smaller. Maybe not trust, but curiosity. Maybe not belief, but the first step toward it. She reached out slowly and took the food packet. Her hands still shook. But she opened it and took a bite, warm, sweet, full of energy. Tears rolled down her cheeks, not from fear, but from the strange pain of kindness. a kindness she had forgotten. Could exist. Jace didn't say a word, didn't move. He just let her be, and as the fire burned low, she held her child tighter. The fear hadn't vanished, but it was softer now. Maybe, just maybe, this human was different. Maybe, just maybe. She had found the first light in her long darkness. The night passed quietly, with only the wind outside whispering against the tent walls. Hope barely slept, her eyes opening at every sound, every movement. Her child, warm now and sleeping peacefully, was the only thing that calmed her heart. But deep inside, she still waited for the moment when everything would break again. Because it always did. Jace had not harmed them, not touched her, not even spoken much since she ate. He had simply stayed nearby. Awake most of the night, keeping the fire alive, she didn't understand him. This human, with kind hands and tired eyes. But part of her wanted to. Part of her wanted to believe he wasn't like the others. When morning came, the storm outside had faded into a soft drizzle of snow. Sunlight broke through the sky in cold blue streaks. Jace stepped out to gather supplies, leaving her and the child in the warmth of the tent. Hope looked around at the items inside: tools, food packs, clean water. She could take some and run. She had done it before, survived off stolen scraps. But as her hand reached for a bag, her child moved and whispered in sleep. That small sound stopped her. She couldn't do it again, not to someone who had saved them without asking for anything. Jace returned shortly after, his jacket covered in frost. He smiled slightly when he saw her still there, still holding her child. "I found some berries near the edge of the rocks," he said, "sweet and safe to eat." She took the food silently, eyes lowering. Then she spoke, slowly, carefully. "I don't understand you," she said. "You should have left us in the snow." Jace sat down, warming his hands by the fire. "I've seen too many left behind," he said. "I won't do that again." Hope didn't know what to say, so she turned her back, reaching for another blanket. As she moved, her worn shirt slipped off her shoulder, and that's when he saw it. A symbol burned deep into her skin, sharp lines, circles. An old slave brand used by raiders decades ago. It had healed badly, leaving a cruel scar that never faded. Jace's face changed, not with disgust, but with something stronger: anger. Not at her, but at the people who did this. She froze when she noticed his stare. Her hands reached to cover the mark quickly, shame burning through her. "I didn't ask for it," she whispered, her voice low, almost broken. "They took me when I was young. I tried to run, they punished me." Jace didn't move, didn't speak for a moment. Then he reached into his bag and pulled out a small med pack. He held it out toward her slowly. "May I?" he asked, voice gentle, not commanding. She hesitated, breathing hard. Then, after a long moment, she nodded. Just once, Jace came closer, knelt beside her, and opened the med pack. His hands were careful as he applied a warm healing gel across the scar. It didn't erase the pain, but it softened it. His touch didn't hurt, didn't judge. She closed her eyes as he worked, tears sliding down silently. "You are not that mark," he said quietly. "You are a mother, a fighter. Someone who kept walking, even when everyone gave up." She looked at him, really looked, and for the first time saw something behind his eyes, a memory, a pain of his own. "You lost someone," she said softly. Jace nodded. "My wife was taken by raiders," he said. "I couldn't save her. I wasn't fast enough." Silence sat between them like an old friend. Shared pain, different stories, same weight. He gently placed a small cloth over her shoulder, covering the scar. "I can't take it away," he said. "But you don't have to carry it alone anymore." Her lips trembled, unsure of how to respond. So she did something she hadn't done in years. She whispered her real name. "The one stolen from her when she was branded Luma," she said. My name was Luma. Jace looked at her with soft eyes. Luma, he repeated. That's a strong name. She nodded, her eyes filled with something new, not fear, not shame, but something like... Beginning, her child woke with a soft sound, blinking up at the two adults nearby. The little one smiled a small, tired smile, but real. Luma picked up the child and held them close. She looked at Jace, not as a stranger now, but as someone standing on the edge of her past and her possible future. Outside, the snow melted slowly under the light of a new sun. Inside the tent, three souls sat together, no longer completely alone, no longer completely broken. Asterisk, the sky turned dark again, not with storm clouds this time, but with the heavy feeling of something coming. Luma sat near the fire, her child sleeping peacefully beside her, wrapped in warmth. Jace had stepped outside to check his perimeter traps. He said it was just routine, just in case, but Luma could feel it in her bones. Something had changed in the air, like the snow itself was whispering warnings. She tightened her grip on her coat and looked out through the tent's small flap. The landscape was still cold, white, but it was too quiet even for this place. No bird sounds, no wind, no shifting trees, just silence thick. Watching, then she saw it, a dark shape moving slowly through the snow, then another and another. Three figures, tall and hooded, moving toward the camp-like shadows with purpose. Her heart dropped, her breath caught. She knew that walk, that slow, cruel patience, slavers. She reached for her child and held them close. Her hands shook, but not from cold. Memories came back fast, screams, chains, the sound of collars locking. The men who branded her were dead, but others had taken their place. Raiders didn't stop. They only changed faces. She crawled to the edge of the tent and peeked out again. They were closer now, weapons in hand, eyes searching, and they were looking right at the camp, right at her. She grabbed the emergency flare gun Jace had left near the door. She didn't know how to use it properly, but her fingers found the trigger. She aimed at the sky and fired. A bright red streak flew up and exploded above the snowfield. The sound cracked through the silence like thunder. Her child woke up crying. Frightened by the blast, Luma held them close, whispering, "It's okay. I'm here. I'm here." But her own heart raced like a drum. Would Jace make it back in time? Would he survive if he did? The slavers had seen the flare and began rushing forward. Luma backed up slowly, thinking. Fast, she couldn't run, not with a child in her arms and snow up to her knees. She had to hide. She found a small storage crate near the tent's rear side. She placed her child inside carefully, covering them with warm cloth. "Stay quiet, little one," she whispered, pressing a kiss to the child's forehead. "I'll come back for you, I promise." Then she turned around and grabbed a metal rod from beside the fire. It wasn't much, but it was better than bare hands. If they wanted her, they'd have to fight. She stood tall, blocking the entrance of the tent, the rod in hand. The slavers came into view, cruel faces smiling under frost-covered hoods. "Well, look what we found," one of them sneered. "Our little lost toy. You made it so easy," said another. "We were just following your trail of weakness." Luma didn't speak. She just raised the rod and stared at them, fire burning in her eyes. They laughed, stepping forward. Then a voice thundered from behind them. "Step away from her, Jace." He stood at the edge of the camp, his plasma rifle pointed straight at the slavers. His face was hard, jaw clenched, eyes full of fury. "I won't say it again." He warned. The slavers turned, surprised but not afraid. "There's one of you and three of us," one said with a grin. "Bad odds for you." Jace didn't blink. "I'm human," he replied. "We don't care about odds." Then he fired. The first shot hit the ground near their feet on purpose, a warning. The next shot hit the leg of the closest slaver, dropping him with a scream. The others scattered, but Jace moved fast. He ran, sliding across the snow, and tackled the second. One to the ground. Luma didn't wait. She lunged forward and swung the rod at the third slaver's arm. It connected with a crack, making him drop his weapon. Jace fired again, hitting the man's shoulder before he could recover. It was over. In minutes, two of them lay groaning in pain. One had fled. Jace stood over them, breathing hard, blood dripping from a cut on his forehead. He looked at Luma, chest rising and falling. "Are you okay?" he asked. She nodded slowly, still gripping the rod. "I hid the child," she said, her voice shaking. "I didn't know if you'd make it. I told you you're safe now," he said, and I meant it. He limped over to the crate, opened it, and pulled out the child. The little one reached out and grabbed his finger. Not afraid at all. Luma stared at the scene, her child smiling at a human, her enemy-turned guardian. Something inside her changed again. Not just safety, but trust. Not just survival, but beginning. The snow had brought shadows, but it also brought light, and in that cold white world, Luma finally believed she wasn't alone anymore. The storm had passed, and the snow was calm again. Luma sat by the fire with her child on her lap. The danger was over, at least for now. The slavers were gone, two of them injured and tied, the third still running somewhere out in the cold. But the quiet inside the camp felt different now. Not like fear, but peace. Jace was outside, fixing a broken sensor that had been damaged in the fight. He moved slowly, favoring his bruised leg. But he didn't complain. He had saved them, risked everything. And now he worked again like it was nothing. Inside the tent, Luma watched her child play with a spoon. The little one poked it into a bowl, then dropped it, then picked it up again. It was such a small thing, but it made Luma's chest ache. She hadn't seen her baby play in weeks, maybe longer. Her child turned to her and made a soft noise. Luma smiled and touched the small nose gently. And then, it happened, a laugh. A clear, light sound, like sunshine in the snow. Her eyes widened, and tears filled them at once. Her child was laughing, not just breathing, not just surviving, but laughing. Luma covered her mouth, her shoulders shaking, not from cold, but from joy. She had almost forgotten what that sound was like. The sound of innocence, of hope returning. Jace walked in just then, brushing snow from his jacket. He paused when he saw her tears. "Is everything all right?" he asked quickly, stepping forward. Luma couldn't speak. She just pointed at her child. The little one looked at Jace, smiled, and laughed again. This time, louder. Jace blinked, then grinned wide. "Well, I guess we're doing something." "Right," he said, sitting beside them. They ate together, quiet and comfortable. Luma gave her child tiny pieces of warm food, and the child giggled every time Jace passed her a napkin without asking. And she took it without fear. The silence between them now was no longer cold, was gentle. It felt like something rare was growing in the space between breaths. After the meal, Jace unrolled a flat device from his bag and pressed a button. A screen lit up, showing maps, coordinates, and blinking alerts. Luma leaned closer, her eyes scanning the shapes. "What is that?" she asked. "My beacon," he said. "I turned it on last night when I saw the slavers, in case I didn't make it." Her face tightened. "You thought you would die?" he shrugged. "I've seen worse odds," he said. "But that's not why I turned it on." She looked at him, confused. "I turned it on for you," he said softly. "So someone would come. Someone to help if I couldn't." Luma didn't know what to say. No one had ever done that for her, not even her own people. To think a human, a stranger, would call help, not for himself, but for her. It shook something deep in her chest. The beacon flashed again, louder now. Jace stared at the screen, then frowned. "That's new." he muttered. What is it? Luma asked. Jace turned the device toward her. A ship is nearby, he said. Human Rescue Patrol, about 4 hours. Away, her breath caught. Rescue, she repeated. He nodded. They'll see the signal and come here. He said, we'll be safe. Luma looked down at her child. Safe. The words sounded strange. Unfamiliar. She should have felt relief. But inside, fear twisted. Quietly, what happens when they come? She asked slowly. Jace looked at her. Reading her face carefully, they'll want to know who you are, why you are here, he said. They might offer help, or take my child, she whispered. Jace's eyes narrowed. No, he said firmly. I won't let that happen. Luma's voice was soft but sharp. You don't understand your people, she said. To them, I'm just another refugee. Another alien with no ID, no money, no planet. I understand more than you think, Jace replied. But I also know this no one takes your child while I breathe. Luma stared at him, searching for doubt, but found none. He meant it, every word. The rest of the day passed in nervous quiet. Jace checked supplies and packed bags, just in case they had to move. Luma cleaned the tent, folding cloths, checking her child's warmth, but her mind raced the whole time. What if they took her? What if the humans separated them? She couldn't survive that not again. That night, Jace lit the fire brighter than usual. We'll talk to them together, he said. I'll stand with you, always. Luma nodded. Eyes shining in the firelight, she believed him not because she wanted to, but because he had earned it, not with gifts, not with promises, but with actions. And behind her, her child laughed again, not because of food or fire, but because the world finally felt safe, because for the first time, the cold was no longer. The only thing holding them, the sky turned golden with the light of a rising sun. For the first time in many days, it wasn't hidden behind clouds or storm. It shone gently over the frozen land, melting small patches of snow. Luma stood near the tent's edge, holding her child close. The warmth of the fire behind her couldn't chase away the storm inside her heart. Today, the human ship would arrive. Today. She had to decide what kind of life she would choose. Jace was busy packing his supplies into a strong gray bag. His hands moved with calm skill, but his face held quiet tension. He looked at her now and then, as if waiting for her to say something. But Luma remained silent. She watched the sky. Watched the beacon flash again and again. Every red pulse was a countdown. To safety or to losing everything again. She had no homeland left, no tribe to return to. But the fear of stepping into another human world burned like fire in her chest. Jace finally walked over, his voice quiet. They'll be here in less than an hour, he said. She nodded. I know. He sat on a crate nearby, watching her carefully. You haven't said what you want, he said. Luma turned to face him, her eyes sharp with worry. What do I want? She whispered. I want not to be afraid. Not to run. Not to lose my child again. She paused, holding her baby tighter. But the moment I step on that ship, I'm no longer in control. Jace listened without interrupting. They'll scan me, ask questions, maybe lock me away, she said. You said they help. But help always comes with rules, with papers, with lines I don't understand. Jace stood slowly and walked to her side. He didn't touch her. Just stood close enough to share the same air. I can't promise you what they'll say, he admitted, but I can promise I'll be with you. She looked up at him, her voice a whisper. Why do you care so much? Jace met her gaze. With calm eyes, because someone once saved me, and I failed to save her back. He looked at the child, who was resting against Luma's chest, warm and calm. I couldn't protect my own family, he said, but I can protect yours now. The wind picked up softly, lifting snowflakes into the air. The silence between them was no longer awkward, just full of unsaid things. Jace reached into his jacket and pulled out a small silver card. "This is a civilian partner pass," he said, "with my clearance. They'll treat you like my family." Luma stared at it, unsure. "You'd say I'm your..." "What companion?" he said gently. "Partner, mother of a child I've sworn to protect." The words made her chest feel tight. She had always been a burden, a mistake, a stain on the records of others, but now a human one with scars. And strength was offering her a place, a name, a future. Still, the fear didn't leave. "What if they find out I was branded?" she asked. "What if they separate us?" Jace shook his head firmly. "They won't," he said. "But if they try, I'll fight for you, I swear it." A deep rumble broke the air, the sound of engines loud, steady, powerful. The rescue ship had arrived. A silver shape appeared in the sky, lowering slowly onto the ice field nearby. Snow blew in every direction as it landed, its legs digging into the hard ground. Jace stepped forward and turned to Luma. "It's time," he said. "But only if you choose it." Luma looked down at her child, who blinked up at her with wide, trusting eyes, a child who had laughed for the first time yesterday. A child who deserved warm meals, real beds, a name and a future. She looked back at the tent, at the fire, at the broken pieces of her old life. Then she looked at Jace, who had no chains, no lies, only steady hands and patient eyes. She stepped forward, not fast, not afraid. With her child in her arms and wind in her hair, she walked beside him to the ship. The door hissed open, and a soft voice greeted them from inside. "Welcome, civilian transport. Please identify." Jace stepped in front of her, his tone firm. "Jace Ryder, human explorer." With registered partner and dependent, the light turned green, and the door opened wider. No alarms, no questions. Luma stepped inside, her feet trembling slightly on the smooth floor. The air inside was warm, clean, full of strange scents she had never smelled before. Her child let out a soft giggle again, as if sensing something bright ahead. Jace smiled. "You did it?" he whispered. "No," Luma replied, voice steady. "We did it." The ship lifted slowly into the sky, leaving behind the frozen wasteland where pain had once ruled her life. Luma stood near the large viewing window, her child held close against her chest. The world below shrank into a white blur, and for the first time in what felt like forever, she didn't feel small. Jace stood beside her, silent, strong. He hadn't spoken much since they boarded, but he didn't need to. His presence was enough. She wasn't alone, not anymore. The rescue crew had greeted her with calm voices, soft scans, and warm blankets. No cuffs, no cold words, no threats. Just questions, simple, kind, careful. Jace answered. Most of them. He gave her time. Time to breathe. Time to be more than just a number or a scar. Her child had already become a favorite among the crew. The little one giggled at every blinking light, every sound. A human nurse gave them a soft toy shaped like a bear. The child clutched it like treasure, refusing to let go. Luma watched it all with wide eyes, struggling to believe this was real. This was peace. Later, she sat on a padded bench in the sleeping cabin. The walls hummed gently with the sound of motion. She closed her eyes, letting the warmth soak into her skin, and when she opened them, she found Jace watching her. "You look different," he said softly. "Different how?" she asked, brushing her fingers through her child's hair. "Not afraid," he replied. She gave him a slow, tired smile. "I'm not sure I believe this yet." She whispered, "It feels like a dream. And I'm scared to wake up." "You're not dreaming," he said. "You're choosing." That word echoed in her heart. Choosing. For most of her life, others had chosen for her what to eat, where to go, what she was worth. But now, she had chosen this ship, this man, this future. Even if the road ahead was unknown, she had walked toward it on her own feet, and that changed everything. A soft chime rang through the ship's hull. The voice of the pilot came through the speaker. "We'll arrive at Earth Station in 35 minutes. Luma's body tensed slightly. Earth, the human world. A place she had only heard of in whispers full of metal towers, oceans, and rules she didn't understand. "Will they accept me?" she asked suddenly, her voice low. Jace turned to her, his face calm. "They'll accept me," he said. "And? I won't go anywhere without you." She nodded slowly, heart pounding. She didn't know what the people on Earth would think. She didn't know if they'd see her as a mother, or just another alien. But she knew this: Jace would be there. Her child would be there, and she would not run anymore. When the ship entered Earth's orbit, she gasped softly. The planet glowed blue and green below them, not harsh and icy. Like her old world, but alive, warm, waiting. She pressed her forehead gently to the glass, her child mimicking her. Both of them staring down at the world they never thought they'd see. The ship landed gently on a large platform surrounded by tall towers and bright lights. Crowds of people moved like rivers across the spaceport. Luma's breath caught as the door opened and warm air brushed her skin. Jace stepped out first, then turned and held out his hand. She stared at it, remembering the cold, the chains, the fear, and then she took it, together. They walked into the light. Officers at the gate scanned Jace's ID and glanced at her once, then waved them through without questions. A quiet hallway led them to a clean, open lounge where new arrivals rested. Luma sat down on a bench, her child curled against her side. She watched humans pass by, some smiling, some tired, none staring at her like a monster. She was invisible, and somehow that felt safe. Safe was a powerful thing. Hours passed, papers were filed, arrangements made. Jace spoke with an officer who offered housing, education, and healthcare when he returned. He handed her a small plastic card. It had her new name, Luma. Not a slave name, not a number, but hers. She stared at it, her hands shaking. Jace sat beside her and said, "This is your beginning, not your end." Her child woke with a yawn and looked around, then pointed toward the window where sunlight poured through. "Mama," the child whispered. Smiling, Luma froze, tears filling her eyes. It was the first time she'd heard that word from those tiny lips. Jace put a hand on her shoulder, firm and warm. She turned to him and whispered, "Thank you." He nodded. "You don't have to thank me," he said. "Just live." Outside the window, the sun rose higher in the sky. It was no longer cold, and for Luma, every breath now felt like a gift. She had walked through darkness. She had clutched her child with shaking hands. But now, she stepped into a new world with open arms. The past would always be part of her, but the future, at last, belonged to her too. Not just because she survived, but because she was chosen by a human who saw her as more than broken. He saw her as family, and in this new sunrise, she finally believed it.